Module 7, Corpus type, text type and purpose of design. In this module, we discuss different corpora based on the type of texts and purpose of design. Also, we show how these corpora are vary in representation of text as well as in utilization. In this module, the scheme of classification of corpora is considered only two important parts, that is type of texts and purpose of design. So based on the type of texts, according to us, we can have corpus of three types. One is called monolingual corpus. Next one is bilingual corpus and multilingual corpus. The example of a bilingual corpus is ISI Bangla corpus, which is developed there at Indian Statistical Institute, Linguistic Research Unit. The example of bilingual corpus is, say, ILCI Hindi Bangla corpus, which is developed here as a consortium mode in the ILCI project of the Government of India. Example of a multimodal corpus or multilingual corpus is best the TDIL text corpus of Indian languages, which is the first attempt made by the DIT to develop corpus in Indian languages. So now I would like to go into details and discuss some of the aspects of the monolingual corpus, bilingual corpus and multilingual corpus. As it happens, the monolingual corpus, so the name clearly indicates that it contains text samples obtained from a single language only. So, other conditions being equal, the process of selections of texts, inclusion of text in the corpus is similar to that of a general corpus, but the basic importance is that here texts are coming from a single language. The text samples that are selected for inclusion in the corpus are found to be used in various domains and fields of linguistic inquiry across time, space, and events by the language users. It has also the scope to include the written samples of text as well as the speech samples of texts, so long their mutual collaboration and cohabitation or mutual interference do not hamper the proposed framework envisaged by the investigators with the texts included in the corpus. It is always better to keep those two types of text separate, but they can come under the one umbrella as monolingual corpus. A monolingual corpus may be considered as a general corpus, as I mentioned, as most of the features, basic features of a general corpus are invariably present in a monolingual corpus. The homogeneity of structure and generalized lexicon obtained from a single language or a particular variety makes a monolingual corpus highly useful in works related to mainstream linguistic descriptions and linguistic conversion. If we keep aside the issue of machine translation, where bilingual text or bilingual corpora are of tremendous importance, in most of the cases, the tools and techniques required to be developed for linguistic technology can invariably depend on monolingual corpus. The normal practice of designing a monolingual corpus tends to include text samples from the standard variety, both of spoken speech and writing, rather than including text samples from the dialects or the non-standard varieties. For obvious reasons, we always try to take text samples which are considered and accepted as standard forms of texts. Usually, it is designed according to the principles followed for a general corpus. Since the primary goal of a monolingual corpus is to represent a particular language or a variety in a general fashion. For similar reasons, it keeps quantity of data large in size. because it seeks to demonstrate both the general and typical linguistic properties of a particular language under investigation. The best example here is the American National Corpus, which is a very nice example of a monolingual corpus. It has both the part, one speech part, one text part, and it is meant to represent the general pattern or type or nature or structure of American English. This contains large account of text of American English both in spoken and written form. Similarly, if you look at the ISI Bangla corpus, you can find out, it also can be cited as a good example of monolingual corpus because it contains texts only from the Bangla written prose texts only. And this corpus, however, lacks in the poetry one property that contains of the written Bangla texts only. It doesn't include the spoken texts, whereas American National Corpus includes some samples of written text, spoken texts. Obviously, the theoretical extension of a monolingual corpus is a bilingual corpus. A bilingual corpus, on the other hand, contains text samples from two languages. The simple of designing a bilingual corpus is to put the two monolingual corpus side by side, which were originally monolingual corpus, where both the corpora follow the same designing principles. The most suitable and competent bilingual corpus is one which contains samples of text from two genetically similar or typologically similar related languages. Here each part is designed following the similar text types, genres, and sampling procedures so that each part becomes maximally similar to the other part in case of text representation, text processing, and cross-references. Uniformity in structure of text samples, maximum similarity in sentence structures, and close semantic relation in lexicon stock make a bilingual corpus highly useful for cross-lingual studies across register variations as well as on domain-specific translation tasks. A befitting example of bilingual corpus is the, say, Love corpus and the Brown corpus. Love corpus actually formed following the same designing principles followed for Brown corpus. Although, while Love corpus contained the texts from British English, while Brown corpus contained the texts from American English, and both the corpus actually contained text produced almost at similar time. So the samples are produced in the year 1961. The time there is similar. The only difference between the two, the Brown corpus included text from American English, Love corpus had the British English. Thus, these two corpora become a model for bilingual corpus, which is highly useful for various cross-linguistic studies between American English and British English. So, here we have given some examples how the bilingual corpus in Indian languages are developed between Hindi and Bangla from ILCI project, Indian Languages Corpora Initiative project, where the content, text, sentence types between Hindi and Bangla are matched maximally. A bilingual corpus, if it is designed with text samples of two marginally related languages, say Bangla and Tamil, or English and Chinese, or English and Hindi, it will be treated as a parallel corpus. Because while the text samples may be aligned at the sentence or phrase level, following certain predefined alignment procedures. A bilingual corpus may permit variations in content of a text as well as in the amount of language data, which are not, however, allowed in cases of parallel corpus. We'll discuss what is a parallel corpus in our next modules. Now, if we extend the concept of bilingual corpus in a multilingual country like India, we must land with the concept of multilingual corpus. For the purpose of expanding the domains of applications of language corpora, a bilingual corpus may be converted into a multilingual corpus by way of including texts from more than 2 linguistically related languages. That means a multilingual corpus is allowed to contain collections of text samples obtained from more than 2 languages. In principle, a multilingual corpus should possess moderate collections of text samples from individual monolingual corpus only when these monolingual corpora are developed through similar sampling procedures. Moreover, each one must contain samples of similar text types from each of the languages included into it. While developing a monolingual corpus designers need to keep in the following factors into mind to make it a multilingual corpus in function and in utilization. So the basic thing is that while developing the monolingual corpus, if we follow certain parameters already predefined uniformly across all languages, then ultimately all those monolingual corpora can be clubbed together to constitute a multilingual corpora. What are those parameters? Now, each corpus should contain text samples from similar sources, so that text samples can exhibit maximum similarities in sentences, phrases, idioms, lexicon, and content also. Text samples are selected inclusion in the corpus should belong to the similar genres and text types. The date of publication of text samples should be identical for each of the member languages. The mode of representation of text samples should be similar for each of the languages. The amount of data and the manner of data collection should be similar for both the languages, all the languages included. Important. Same designing principles and identical processing mechanisms or techniques should be used for each of the languages. If we follow these mechanisms or principles very rigorously, systematically, then several monolingual corpora so far developed for Indian languages may be clubbed together to develop a multilingual corpus. If these conditions are properly followed, then we can have a good comparable corpus, a multilingual corpus. So, we can have uniform corpus compilation process, corpus processing techniques, and subsequent analysis strategies to retrieve similar kinds of information from the multilingual corpus. At present, I can refer to the very good example of the TDL corpus of Indian languages, which were developed in early 90s in the last century, where same guidelines and procedures, methods were unanimously followed across all Indian languages in the Corpus TDL project, Corpus for Indian Languages. Each part of this corpora contained data from the same decades, collected from similar sources and text types, and developed following the same principles of same guidelines or designing principles. Due to these similarities, these corpora have strong application relevance for cross-lingual information retrieval, applications in machine translations, language teaching, interlingual information exchange, language education across Indian languages. There is also possibility that these corpora can be used to analyze to retrieve similar syntactic frames or grammars or patterns to develop a core grammar for genealogically or typologically or geographically located languages. The only notable deficiency of these corpora lies in the absence of representative text samples from the spoken sources. As I have already mentioned here, that most of the languages corpora developed for Indian languages are actually of written text samples. So these corpora do not possess or do not have any spoken text samples. Due to this reason particularly, these are not claimed to be multidimensional or maximally representative of the Indian languages. Even then, They are quite useful to be treated as multilingual corpora. Although there are only a few multilingual corpora available at present across the globe, several organizations across the world are actually involved to develop multilingual corpora because that gives good opportunity for cross-lingual fertilization. Other important aspect of multilingual corpora is that there are some collections of, say, language databases where text samples are more than 2 languages are just put together in an arbitrary manner, in a haphazard way. Unless these collections share some common features in text selection, at least at the level of being tagged to be comparable corpora, they are nothing more than a collections of texts from 2 different or many different languages. They therefore seem to be non-qualified to be considered as multilingual corpora. So this is the first part. Second part, we are talking about purpose of design. Based on the purpose of design, we have 2 types of corpora. One is called unannotated corpus. Another one is annotated corpus. Here we need to understand what does this terms annotation means. We will discuss about it in our subsequent modules. But for the time being, let us just refer to the terms unannotated corpus and annotated corpus. A good example of annotated corpus is TDL corpus of Indian languages, unannotated example of unannotated, because nothing of this text is annotated at any level. Whereas an example of annotated corpus, say Birmingham corpus of English texts. So what happens while we are collecting a corpus, there are different types of information need to be annotated. So in cases of unannotated corpus, what happens? No additional information is exactly tagged to the text. Nothing. So it is only the raw texts. In cases of annotated corpus, additional information is normally tagged. So let us understand in a very clear-cut way. An unannotated corpus represents the simple raw state of plain texts collected from a language. That means the text samples which is included into the corpus are in their simple format without any additional information tagged to them by any external sources. While spoken texts are kept in simple transcribed form, written texts are kept in simple orthographic form. Although most of the corpora available in the present day belong to this type, there are increasing efforts for converting unannotated corpora into annotated form in most of the languages across the world. What you understand is that annotated corpus is the first version, annotated was the revised version, where additional information is tagged. As we clearly understand that annotated version of corpus is of more application potential, user friendly, application friendly than annotated corpus. Because of this reason, all the corpora so far developed are now being processed or rendered into annotated version. Functionally, the utility of a corpus is considerably increased after annotation. So, annotation adds many more layers of information to the texts, which becomes necessary for machine learning as well as for applications in different domains of linguistics. Even then, it is better to keep the corpus in its natural raw state. Most of the people argue that we don't want annotated one. Our requirement is unannotated raw corpus because additional information tagged to the corpus means actually manipulating the original texts. We don't require that kind of text. So there is a requirement for unannotated version of the text, unannotated version of the corpus. It is to keep its natural way. So it is always better to have 2 versions. One version an annotated version, another version is non or unannotated version. In unannotated version, it protects the corpus from being infected with external intervention of any kind. If required, an unannotated corpus may be converted into annotated one based on the requirement of the end users, but that is additional. So, annotated version is the more preferred one for some people than the annotated one. So, in spite of various technological and functional advantages in case of corpus annotations, most of the corpora in Indian languages are still in unannotated form. So, this is not because that we are supporting that corpus should be there in unannotated version. This is because the reason is that we who have developed corpora for Indian languages are not well trained to annotate those corpora in different ways. So, in most of the Indian languages, whatever corpora are available are mostly available in non or unannotated form. Annotated form versions of those corpora are available, and that to very minimized one, very short one, or precise one, or a very limited one for specific purposes. Since these are not annotated of any kind of linguistic or interlinguistic information, Indian language corpora, the multifunctional utility is yet to be emphasized by the people like us who use or need to use those corpora for various linguistics and non-linguistic activities. The point is that we urgently need those corpora to be annotated, but since we lack in data or information or training, we are not been able to develop those corpora into annotated form. So, most of the corpora so far developed in Indian languages are available in non-annotated form. Now, whenever we are talking about annotated corpus, we need to understand what is this and how it is done. At the other end of is an annotated corpus, which contains information collected from outside world and loaded in the corpus by corpus annotators. These are mostly related to orthographic, demographic information, age, sex, profession, ethnicity, authors of speakers, and of textual information, analytical marks, parts of speech, word class, grammatical category, semantic information of words that are found to be used in the text. So, annotations are actually of two types, interlinguistic and extralinguistic annotation. In case of a text corpus, interlinguistic information is mostly related to lexical, grammatical, phrasal, syntactic, idiomatic, semantic, usage, and other information related to linguistic elements used in the corpus. Information of these types are actually tagged in a corpus for future linguistic analysis and reference. Interlinguistic investigation varies in different ways depending on the process used for annotating corpus as well as on the manner of use of corpus in subsequent works. A fine example of interlinguistic annotated corpus is the British National Corpus, in which words, phrases, sentences, clauses, idioms, paragraphs are tagged, annotated manually by some expert linguists and made it available both in human readable and machine readable form. So far, the techniques and systems that are used for annotating corpus include several types. There is different types of annotations normally tagged on the texts used in the corpus. So, number one is first orthographic annotation, then there is poetic annotation, grammatical annotation, semantic annotation, syntactic annotation, anaphoric annotation, discourse annotation, etymological annotation, and many other types of annotations normally added to the texts. What we understand or we see that besides the intralinguistic information embedded into a corpus also contains information from various external domains relating to the source of the text, first date of publication, composition of text, name, gender, age of the authors, domain of use of text, etc. So these are identified as extralinguistic information, which may also be systematically encoded and preserved in the text itself in the form of a header file of a corpus. The header file is actually a format which is used typically before the actual beginning of the text, the load of information relating to the extralinguistic data or information to the text. It usually contains information about the domains of fields of texts, name and profession of authors and speakers, year of collection, publication text, year of collections of the text, collection of speech text, gender, race, ethnicity, age of the speakers and writers, broad areas of discourse and pragmatics, and sometimes the sentiments of the interactants or the speaker or the author embedded in the text. Apparently, such information may appear useless to us, but it becomes highly essential and useful in the works of solving problems relating to copyright, as well as investigating the various issues relating to sociolinguistics, culture, and discourse of a text. We have some examples here to show how text can be annotated at different levels. This annotation scheme so far we discussed is actually related to written texts. In case of spoken text, we have a different set of annotation guidelines or annotation techniques. In case of speech corpus, for example, extralinguistic information varies to a great extent from a written corpus. Here, it is related to age, gender, profession, academic qualifications, social status, economic positions, ethnicity, orientation, occupation, and many other things that are mostly related to the speaker's informants. This information becomes useful in case of spoken text analysis and investigations. A very good example of annotated speech corpus is Lund speech corpus, which carries various types of demography information relating to the informants and that are tagged with the texts. So while we are analyzing text, we find out about many demographic information about the speakers who have produced those texts. We have already given some examples here also to show how this has been done. There are several important issues related to the work of annotation into the corpus. Most important questions is which arise in the time of minutes are the following. What is the basic need of annotation in a corpus? Next thing, which things are going to be annotated into a corpus? How these things to be annotated? So three important ones. Why it is important, how it should be done, and what should be done. So since it is not very easy and simple to address all those questions, we can explore or understand or discuss some things. We can understand how this can be carried out. It is indirectly related to several linguistic and non-linguistic issues. So whenever we say what should be annotated, it is quite clear to us that we need to annotate those information to the text, to the corpus, which we think may be relevant or useful in future reference or analysis of the text. In general, an annotated corpus is a reformed version of a written or spoken corpus, in which additional information, which is not directly available from the text itself, are encoded with the text from outside, obviously. This work is initially carried out manually by experts who knows the intricate aspects or complexities involved in the language, who read between the words of text and identify information to be encoded with the elements of the text. After manual annotation, an annotated version of the text is created. The text is further verified, corrected, and validated to be used as a benchmark resource for the purpose of training of a system. So based on this, based on the information, based on the data, examples retrieved from the manually corrected, annotated and corrected version of the text, a lot of algorithm can be generated, systems can be developed, which can annotate more texts based on the specific rules and systems and modules developed for this. Now, a corpus is accepted as an annotated one if the following conditions are fulfilled. Number one, if the corpus qualifies to address the complexities observed in a language or a language variety. Number two, if it succeeds to preserve as well as manifest both internal and external linguistic information carried within a piece of text. If it enhances the functional efficiency and robustness of texts for processing and utilizing these in various domains of linguistics application and language technology. It is certified by end users as a highly useful resource for all kinds of linguistic as well as language technology works. Then only we can consider a particular scheme of annotation is quite successful. The question, what are the challenges we have in the development of this corpus? So point is that a non-annotated version of a corpus is not as useful as an annotated version, because annotated version of a corpus carries huge load of additional information inside the text that makes the text to be more intelligible to the end users as well as to the system. And also we understand that we need a lot of expertise or skill to do the task of annotation. The challenge is how to develop the annotated lines, how to implement it, how to train a system, how to design an algorithm, and how to do it either automatically or in semi-supervised manner. All those things require very sophisticated training on the part of the system developers or the people who are to be involved in annotation. At the time of manual annotation, it would be very clear that only those people who have very strong linguistic background or understands the features of language may be considered to do the task. Second important thing is that annotation, when is being done manually, should never be done by a single person only. The same text may be done at least by 3 people, so that there is bound to have several issues where counter opinions would come up, or we can find out the same elements are tagged or annotated in different ways. So the advantage of having 3 annotators is that where 2 people agree together, we can go for a better, as a more acceptable annotation rather than the other way around. So we need a good system, we need digitized text as well as a large team of good linguists to do the tasks. It is proposed that the term annotated corpus can be used to any text that includes codes that record extralinguistic and interlinguistic information of various types, such as analytical marks, provenance, etc. Again, it should be categorically stated that annotations should be separable from the plain texts in a simple and agreed fashion. The first point we have mentioned, that there should be two versions of the text. One is non-annotated, another is annotated. And there should have a clear-cut provisions to migrate from annotated version to non-annotated. A set of conventions from removing, restoring, and manipulating annotations is absolutely necessary, especially in the context of next few years where people are hoping to get large amount of texts tagged at various levels to be utilized for various other purposes. Therefore, it is foolish to expect that the big corpora will remain easy to manipulate or manage if these pull up various annotations. No, the reverse one. So we should have a mechanism, very clear-cut system where adding annotations and removing annotations from the text is a very simplified one. So to conclude, we can say that there are definitely certain reasons behind converting a non-annotated text into annotated version. Because an annotated version of text gives us more advantages in its utilization, access, and analysis. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind very clearly that the annotated version of a text or a corpus may have utility to a certain group of people, and a large group of people may not be interested into the annotated version of the text. For them, the unannotated or the raw version of text is more useful resource than the other one. So, keeping in mind, it should be realized that different types of texts or corpus can be generated, keeping in the purpose of utilizations. In language technology and applied linguistics, the utility of corpus is considerably increased if it is available in an annotated form. This already almost we have understood. An annotated corpus is more useful for developing tools and techniques for morphological processing, word sense disambiguation, parsing, information retrieval, text mining, developing digital dictionary also, spelling machine and machine translation and similar other works. So it has also tremendous usefulness in general lexicography, language research and language teaching. Even then, we need to have a corpus both in annotated and non-annotated version that justifies the utility of corpus in multiple domains of human knowledge and human linguistics enterprises. Thank you.